Alright, ready for muscle testing with insulin. So, I just ate my lunch and I did not dose. What a problem. Okay, so we've already seen which finger goes strong or weak. If you didn't get that part, please go back to the last video. We've already learned to calibrate what strong and weak feels like. So now the question, and if you didn't get that and you haven't practiced your calibrations, go back to the last video. Now, even if you don't feel like you're prepared to do all the testing and this feels overwhelming or it's a burden, if you understand what the steps are and you know you might have to go back and I'm still working on this one and this one I got, but whatever, that's okay. You can proceed and go back and touch up the steps as you like. So before we do any testing, what are we going to do? Go ahead and do that tapping point that I taught you in the first video. Yes, I'm really hammering it home. You got to watch the instructions at the end of the last video before proceeding, because I spent whatever 10-15 minutes teaching that and I don't want to do it again, frankly. Okay, so we're going to do our tapping point, and for whatever we're going to test, we're going to get in the habit of using both the last finger that was strong and the first finger that was weak. I want to see, is it bad for me? And then if it wasn't bad for me, I want to see if it's good for me. We're looking for what changes. So my last finger that was strong, if this one changes, it went weak, probably a bad idea for me. If that doesn't change, but my first finger that was weak changes, again, if you don't know what that term means, it's in the last video, that means my finger went strong and it was good for me. So I just ate and I didn't take insulin. I was slightly trending downward anyway. Let's see if my body wants insulin, and I believe that it will, and how much insulin it wants. I'm going to grab one more needle. Just wanted to empty one so we can start. So first I'm going to take a high amount, higher than I would need, and I'm going to test that. I'm going to go to the last finger that was strong, and it goes weak, meaning allergic. Allergic might not be the word. Body doesn't want it. I'm going to shoot some back in. It goes weak. Body does not want that. I'm going to go down another unit. Test positive, but it's only +1. I'll get into counting in a moment. This dose, +1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. My body wants this dose. So I'm going to take my 2 and a 1/5. You guys don't count in fifths yet? Come on. 2 and a 1/5 units of insulin or so. So that was pretty cool. Now I should be neutral, right? If I add any food, my body shouldn't want that food. So let's see, how's our angle here? I've got crackers here. I've got this big pile of these wassa-like crackers. Now, if my body wants them, it's not because of the sugar. I would have to go take more insulin. So these are neutral. Not bad, but my body doesn't want it. If, let's say I take something a little bit more drastic here, and I will go through the counting steps in a minute. I got this emergency orange slices. And I got these while I was traveling. 11 grams of carbs per slice. So let's say I take out 44 grams of carbs to play with. 1, 2, 3, 4. How are we going to test these? Okay, so I can put them in a pile. I can point at it and test. Other option, I have these over here. So I can point at it and test. But what if you need to test your last strong finger is your top finger? You can't point and test. So the other option is I can hold my hand over it. Let's say I'm holding my hand. I want to test this T. I'm going to hold my hand over that T. It's got to be within 4 inches, about an inch or 2, 3 inches. So hold my hand over the T, and I'm aiming for the T, not the cup. Kind of focus on it. Doesn't test bad. I'm going to go to the pinky, test positive. So that's good. So the tea is good for me. Thank goodness. That was what I made after my lunch. But the candy, let's see precisely how well this candy tests, right? So enter the question of counting. There's 2 different protocols for counting strong or weak states. I think you know if this one's going to make me stronger or weaker. If I go to my pinky, my first weak finger, to see if it makes me go strong, what are we expecting? It does not make me go strong. Eating these 44 grams of sugar, mostly high fructose corn syrup, and gelatin, my body's like, I don't think so, Sam. I don't think so. That said, if I took these and I placed them in my hand by focusing on these, I could then see that my body wants insulin. Another way to do that, I hold my hand over these and I grab onto my insulin and focus on the insulin and then test. And it tests ridiculously positive. That's my 15 test positive 7 or 8. So it might not be the exact correct dose, but I can hold my hand over this. And while holding my hand over this, then go to the other item, the insulin, test positive. But that idea is maybe not such a good idea for right now. I don't like having that much fun in a day. So you're going to want to be able to count because you want the dose that's really good, not just +1. So here's the way we count. It's pretty simple. If something was going to make us strong, we've got a B here. Let's say my T. I go to my first finger that was weak and I test it. That's +1 with 1 finger on my dominant hand. Now I'm going to add a second finger into that ring to try to break it apart. It broke apart. What does that mean? It's not +2. It's only +1. I've got a supplement here, which I won't get into. If I take a small dose of this and I pour it in my little cap here, and where could I put this? I'll just test it like that. I'm just going to put like a few drops in this, and I place it in the cap here. Does my body want this supplement? I go back to my weak finger, +1, 2, 3, 4. All I can count is up to +4. So we're going to stick with up to +4, and we're also going to stick to down to -4. Now let's see if something is bad for me. I don't want to use my first weak finger. I'm going to use my first weak finger only to see if something makes me stronger. I'm going to use my last strong finger, which in my case is my ring finger. Learn more about that in the last video, the end. So I'm going to go to my last strong finger, and I'm really going to focus because there's 4 pieces of candy. They're all in this loose kind of pile, and it goes weak, it goes weak, it goes weak, it goes weak. -4, no bueno. So no thanks, candy, no thanks. Now, if I do something like, this is my 15 unit, as you do this, you get like a little bit, let's see, I'm going to try with a little bit less first. Lose some insulin. So if I take this candy and I focus on that first, and I know that it makes me negative, and then I add the insulin by focusing on that with my other hand, that's neutral. I wouldn't really trust that. What's that? Yikes. So the little 14 units for 4 pieces of candy. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. You can figure out my carb ratio from that. So another design, which I think is maybe more reasonable, let's try a banana. Oh no, I lost the special angle for my shot. What a great videographer I am. This is really professional quality stuff here. Should have done this at my office, but it's quarantine. Okay, so the banana, same thing. I'm going to start, and it's just weak, but it only does -1. So eating the banana is not a terrible idea. Let's see what happens when we add some insulin. I've got too many needles out here now. Not this one, not this one. Okay. We'll go with this one. Okay, so I'm going to start with more than I think that I need. Get rid of that cap. I'm going to place my non-dominant hand over the banana for a moment, and then go to the insulin, still negative. And that's about what you just saw me do there is about as fast as you'll see me do it. Right now I'm wasting my insulin, I'm just shooting it out. So normally I don't do that, you'd inject it back in. But just for the sake of time during the video. You'll notice that while I was talking I wouldn't do the test because it requires focus. And we're getting closer there. Let's stop wasting insulin. That test +2, and I might have overdone it, so I could put some back in, but it's gonna be where I'm at, close to where I'm at now. And so that's +4. So that's how I would find my dose. I wouldn't do it the other way around. I wouldn't start with insulin and then see how much food you can have. And I wouldn't do this too crazy either for your first times doing it. I would do it maybe something like that's 10 grams. Like if I was playing with these, if you're fairly low carb, I would take 2 of these on an empty stomach and test the insulin dose. And if you get it right 3 times in a row, add more, and then get that right another 3 times in a row. I really play with it, and I would really practice. Okay, let's do a little bit crazier kind of stuff. How about crazier stuff? Let me get some insulin ready. Let's just take some let's say I take a random amount of units. Now that the insulin is in my body, right, I can see how much of my preferred sugar source my body would want. So one of these guys, on my hand over, that's still, we're not there. Not going there. Actually, let me just test that to be more specific and show you how fast it changes. Right now, it only tests -1. Eating that only tests -1. So, meaning, you know, if you're taking a supplement, we would want to look for something that's like +3 or +4. Like if I'm giving you an herb, I found an herb that's positive for you, but it's only +1. It's like, maybe we can do better and find something that's really nail on the head. Because the body gets really excited, you know, when there's something that's really... have any other tricks in there? No. The body gets really excited when, you know, you put the right thing in it. Okay, so if I start adding crackers, 1 is, this tests +1. So holding my hand over, +1. 2 of these crackers test +2.5. Sorry, that's 3 crackers. 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 crackers test +4. 5 crackers test negative. So I could start breaking it apart, and you know, it's like 3 3/4 or 3 5/16. I don't really want to eat 4 crackers. Let's see. I take the banana. It tests negative. That's odd. Still tests negative. Test +4. Something like that. So 3 crackers, that seems like the banana would be more, but I'm sure. So these are about 6.5. No, about 5 grams of carbs. So I don't know why the banana is only the equivalent of 3 of those, 15 grams of carbs. But I guess this, maybe that's what it is, 15-gram carb banana. So I could eat these. I'm gonna go back to my candy and see if that reading changed, because I got a -1 on it, and I think maybe I wasn't being neutral there. Because I was basically saying, screw this candy, there's no way I'm going to eat this candy. So it's still +1. So letting the insulin kick in does not matter. It does not have an effect, because the body knows what the insulin's going to do. And that tests +3 actually. So it's kind of interesting. These candies are not ideal for an 11 gram of carb candy per orange slice. So yeah, that tests +4 there. So if I wanted to correct, I could have the banana and some cracker. I think it's actually a little bit less than 1, but maybe it's 1. Or I could have the candy. So obviously I didn't take that much insulin. Still good to let the insulin kick in. So if you are taking the banana and you test the dose of insulin, I wouldn't wait too long if you're using a fast-acting like Humalog or Apidra and Fiasp and stuff like that. But I might wait 10 minutes because although the body wants that amount of insulin in the body, if you're eating a carby meal, the insulin is going to take some more time to get to where it needs to go. A more complicated muscle testing class could explain that phenomenon, where we can use direct resonance to see where the insulin is. You know, did it make it over here? Is it over here? Is it over here? Which is kind of fun. Hang on, I'm going to eat my snack. I do have one of these to use for like if I'm going on a walk or having a crazy day or something. I don't know. I'm still playing with being able to tolerate Bluetooth and see if I can get to a place where I can do that. But right now I have a Bluecon and a Libra. So interesting. The meal that I ate, I was basically already on a track to going low. I think when I ate, I was already below 70. I think I was around 69 and heading downwards. The meal that I ate was basically a low, very like probably 3 grams of carbs in my flatbread kind of thing that I made. And I had one of these, and I had some hummus. So I'd say 9.5, 10 carb meal. And then I came over here, and I wasn't really thinking about it. And I was already going low. So let's see if I can get some history on this. I was probably like around 64. I don't know if you can see this at all, sorry. I was probably around 64 when I took all that insulin. So we get to do this math experiment now, right? And we're going to see what happens to my blood sugar. I think that's kind of cool because we'll see, if I croak, I die here on video. And I did opt for the candy because I was full and I don't have my nicer candy, and I was just, I really didn't want to eat another meal with all those crackers and the bananas and stuff like that. This is just not letting me make it so you guys can see it. Hang on. Alright, my computer mouse is now wearing my watch. So, one of the things that this is sweet for, I would say, is not getting like too stable. Like, we have to be paranoid, and I'm not gonna eat this food. There's no way I'm gonna eat this food, and I have to not getting too like stable in a way that makes us inflexible with the qualities of life we always want to have. So some of the rule breaking things from like a Bernstein standpoint that you're taught not to do is, for example, don't eat something before dinner, in between meals. Every time you snack, consider it like a meal. Insulin is going to be in your system, and there's really twice. So you're stacking your insulin, that kind of issue. And there's no real way to do that math, and he's correct. But with this system, being mindful that if you're stacking your insulins before you go exercise or something, I don't want to say stupid, but plausibly one might see as incorrect, then you have to be really careful with your modeling, really, really careful. So with this system, you can get through that kind of barrier really with no problem. And all of your carb counting, that kind of stuff, the quality of, the quality of life type of issue. Let me turn off this alarm on my... The quality of life type issues where everybody in my family, is eating this thing, and the inflexibility, I think can be good. David Wolfe, the vegan nutrition guy, he quoted some kind of thing that those type A people who tend to be a little bit more about stuff, they also tend to live longer. But you don't want to let that inflexibility impact your quality of life. What am I trying to say? So even a basic thing, like right now we could say that I'm treating a low almost. I was 62 and I took a bunch of units of insulin. And you can see it's already gone up a little bit, and I'm hoping that means it'll go up. But, the insulin is going to kick in later, not now, so maybe it'll go down again, and then I'll have to recheck. But It might just be that this completely works out. Maybe I can record the video and fast forward through it and you can see how the numbers worked. So, but if I was high, I could do the same thing and test the precise amount of insulin that my body wants. And there's a couple like issues, let's say your body is really happy. I told you that you have to test your basal level. Let's say your body is really happy when your blood sugar is like 94 or less, and you're up in 300s. The body might give you a confusing insulin dose, and it might bring you too low or something. If you're really high, the body, almost like an emergency response, might. But in general, what I find is the dose of insulin that tests positive is the literal correct amount to bring you to the ambient basal. So I'm going to talk about that one more time. The basal, you fast multiple days in a row, usually 3 for the first 6, 8, 10 hours, and start muscle testing. Does my body want insulin? Does it want sugar? And see what number it brings you to. And I mentioned just doing this for one day isn't quite enough because we have, fasting and stuff like that can create some imbalances or metabolic shifts, some changes. So you got to do it 3 days in a row and see what it consistently arrives at. And if they're all different, then I would do a 4th day or a 5th day. And it should come to the point where it's remarkably precise, where you say, man, if my body is not 67, my body wants to take more insulin. I'm not saying it's going to be 67 for you. And let's say even if that was the case, you can talk to your endocrinologist. Even if your body technically wants to be at 67, I might press the override button and say, maybe you got the digits wrong and we can go for 76, but 67 I'm not going to do all the time. Or you can try and play with those things in the lower blood glucose level dosages. Sorry for not giving the MMOL conversions everywhere, but yeah, hopefully you can navigate that on your own. What else? Another thing we're using the muscle testing for, again, speaking to that morning fasting kind of principle, is rest periods. As let's say you're not on CGM, it's at least 4 times a day outside of meals, outside of normal testing, outside of checking your blood sugar after the meal. 4 times a day extra you can add to just really quickly take out, gummy bears in your pocket. So does my body want a gummy bear now? Oh, it wants 1 plus 1, but it's not plus 2. Maybe it's plus, and see how many do you need. Or does it want insulin right now? Another focus with that approach is a little bit Bernsteinian, sorry to harping on him and his work, which is the no snacking between meals thing. I think it would be highly preferential for you to focus on just using sugar, even if it's just sugar in water, and you add, something sweet to your water until it tests positive. I mentioned that I used honey, which doesn't bring your blood sugar up, but if you're not having drastic, severe spikes or whatever, then the honey should be fine. If you're, having gentle up and down curves. But I would treat with basically pure glucose or a very rapid sugar source, and I wouldn't treat with the banana and the apple, and I would leave time between when you actually eat meals. I think that that's an important quality or principle of good approach for type 1 diabetics, especially so that when you do eat meals and you eat only a couple meals, each meal you get to take it like a science experiment. Like, I ate breakfast for 3 days and my blood sugar was crap, and I tried this for breakfast and it got better, and this didn't work and this was good. Okay, so it's been about 10 minutes. I'm going to continue our little experiment here and see if my body wants any insulin or any sugar. Let's get a little bit of insulin out into a syringe. To -2. Not so bad. So it's cool because not only do I not want insulin, but it's -2. It's not -4. If it was -4, then I'm going to be betting that that 71's going to go back down really soon. -2, it's like, feels pretty safe. And then let's take just a little bit, half a piece of candy, and -4. A whole piece of candy should be even worse. And then just a smidgen of candy, right? Just a smidgen. Ugh, yucky, annoying. Okay, so that, whatever that is. Test positive 1. Test positive 1. I'm being proactive. I'm going to eat it because, I guess if I really want to do the principle, then I gotta cut this thing up to shreds. 3, 4. Nope. 1, 2, 3. These both test +3. Is it more or less? Down to +4. The +4 is this really tiny little wedge. So I'll take that. My body's like, no more. I'm going to go back and double check for insulin with a very small amount. I guess I'll just do the insulin test properly. So, I mentioned filling the vial, then squirting some back to test when you're covering, but we can also start low and build up. And now that I've hit 80, normally my mind would say, I'm going up to 80, I was low, it's probably going to shoot up, because that was what, yeah, that was it was at 71 to 80, so like, well, that's pretty... For me, that's like, that's a rapidly fast skyrocket. But I did just eat a bunch of candy to the dome, which I don't ever do. So as I go up, it's staying -4 on the insulin. I was just curious if I get any signs anywhere, I think one thing, if you're new to this system, that would be kind of cool, is to have 10 syringes you keep in the fridge, one with 1, 2, but you can add those together, so you can use those as your math unit. So the 2 didn't test, let me add the 1, so you have 3, let me add another 1, so you have 4, let me add 5, so you have 9. You can add them together. So that can be another way to do this as well. So if I had, all these out in little things, so I wonder if that's, so I'm finding a half unit. 1, 2, it's only testing +2. Let's see if it's a little bit less. So I found, yeah, still around a half unit. So, no, is that 1 unit? I've got to learn how to count with I've got they have unit and half unit markers. Okay, so I'm going to leave that there, and I'm going to see if it goes up. The science, the math experiment. There's that meme that type 1 diabetes is, every day is a science experiment. I'd say it's a math experiment, but What do I know? I just get paid to do this stuff. By the way, if you ever want muscle testing on wider health issues, this video is set up to be specifically for insulin, and that's all I really care about. But if you ever want like a full profile where you're like, Sam, what's my scores? There's a couple different programs that I offer. The main one for nutrition stuff is at leralabs.net, leralabs.net. And that's like the online school of, based on Dietrich Klinghart's work. So you get a chart that tells you what your overall body score is. You get a score for each of your major organs, and it's a scan that goes through to find the top barriers or issues with your body that you're having. So it might show up that your number one issue for type 1 diabetic, you have an issue with insulin, like maybe it's you're sensitive to the insulin you're using, or there's some kind of problem with insulin sensitization. Let me see if I can show you. Alright, that took me a little bit of time to find the number updates every 5 minutes, and 2 of those blips happened, and now we're at 98. Okay, so I guess I should go test. So I'm going to test this dose that I prepared with my fractional dose that was really small. And then I'm going to tell you what we do for type 1 diabetes. So that dose still tests just plus 1. If I get a slightly larger dose, let's see if it goes up. Still just plus 1, not worrying about it right now. So, okay, of course now it freezes. Oh my goodness, hang on. So these are some of the areas that we test for type 1 diabetics. When I'm running my profile, I create all these little modules, and I'm like, okay, let me see if our heavy metal module applies to you. Now we've got a flashing light. Let's see if our chemical sensitivity module applies to you. Let's see about the Lyme disease and co-infection module, the parasite module. So everything I divide into these little categories, and just to see if they apply. So the type 1 diabetes program, so there's a bunch of different little categories or modules in it. Testing overall damage from long-term high blood sugar levels. That's obviously the first and maybe most important. There's, let's see, organ-specific damage. So I guess there's some additional specific tests in the next module that looks at the kidneys, eyes, and stuff like this, whereas the first one is general processes directly. Yeah, so one would be, is damage happening from sugar and what that process could be addressed by, and the second is organ-specific damages. The third looks at physical structure, physical tissues, muscle building, teeth, digestive tract, so infections that come about in type 1 diabetics. The next one, mineral content. There's a number of minerals that are needed for insulin to work, so in some ways it has to do with insulin sensitization. And then obviously this is like a top need for type 1 diabetics. We're way more likely to have gluten intolerance, for example. So a full food sensitivity test is one of the modules. There's one that tests physical devices. So if you're having an issue with your adhesive, we try to prepare the body to have a better response. But also CGMs, Bluetooth stuff, your Riley link for the loopers, allergenicities to metal, cadmium. And the later ones look at genetic health and preventing damage and toxins. There's a number of toxicological studies on things that induce type 1 diabetes, so that's a little bit more research required. Where am I at? 98. We'll get another reading in a minute. So if I focus in on this one, wrong finger, +1. It feels like it's almost +2 now. Still just +1. I'm gonna chill with that. So yeah, if you ever want to get a test, we select for you which test you need. So it's like you get this whole map of your body, what you look like. You had a big issue with food sensitivities here. You had a little issue with food sensitivities, but it wasn't as much as this one. You had a nutrient deficiency, and then infections, viral stuff, and stuff like that. But there is a kit of modules that I created just for type 1 diabetes to assess long-term health, which I think is interesting. So the accelerating rate went from +9 in a 5-minute period to +6, I believe, in a 5-minute period. So, you know, that might... I'm not a gambler here, but that's looking like it's going to level off pretty nicely without going up too high. But the last time I did this, I didn't trust it. And this was when I took my bolus instead of my basal. And just as I was starting to come up, I already took some more insulin. Because I'm like, oh, it's going up. It must be going massively up because I don't know if I told this story. So it was one of the things that got me to think about recording this and why it's so helpful. I took my bolus dose when I meant to take my basal dose. And it's going down pretty quick. And I just slugged a whole bunch of honey. I ate enough honey that mentally, psychologically, I'm like, no, there's no way. That's got to be too much. I'm gonna end up, 200 or 300 or whatever. And so, just when it was starting to come up, I took some more insulin, and that led to me having a subsequent low, 15 minutes afterwards, which is fine. This is easy management. This is no big deal to do. If I need to know if I'm gonna go low, piece of candy in my pocket. Do I need a piece of candy? And you can tell right away. Let's see. So another thing that you can do. Actually, I'm gonna pause this video, let this run for a little while, and so it's 12:50 right now. We'll catch you after recess. So the next 5-minute reading is 107. Just checking in, and it says +3 from the last one. So did we have the 104? I think it was 104, but +3 from the last one. So the next reading after the 107 is 108. You can see it's pretty quickly leveling out. So I'm happy with that. It doesn't mean it might not go low again. Like, that insulin still tests +1 for whatever reason. But even if I test, 1, 2, 3, or 4 crackers, none of those options test as positive. So I'm going to let this go through for one more 5-minute reading. If you're going to do this testing, there's probably 3 principles that would be helpful that you get started on right away, which is start with your morning basal. Find what your body's basal wants to be at. And then see, number 2, if you can eat a meal, then return to that basal. And then 3 is organize what meal times you have to eat to always be going back to that basal. So I'll admit it's a little bit Bernsteinian, but I would say, okay, that's the basal my body likes to be at. I'm going to try to stay within 5 units of whatever that metric is. Now, let's say you're a looper. You can still use this. If you're at the basal of, let's say you're at 90, you can muscle test, or using a pump, not just looping. You can muscle test to see if your body wants a bolus, wants a correction. And if it wants the correction, increase your basal a little bit. You know, get your devices to get your number just down a little bit. And then from there, see, do you still want more or do you want some sugar? And try to hone in on whatever that range is. And, you know, one of the things I have to mention, to be an absolutely correct basal dose, whatever that range is, just making sure it wasn't, so +1, yeah. It says 2 minutes ago. I was just wondering if it was 108 twice. So whatever that range is, you really try to keep it there, and that's going to be helpful to you. When you do stuff on the off, you know, let's say they go to school 5 days a week, then they have the weekends. I would use the weekends, whatever your off time, whenever you have more free time, to eat less and experiment rather than go crazy and eat in a lazy way. What you'll find with the third step is the more you can hone in on what your blood sugar is doing first thing in the morning, when do you have to eat that you can restore back to normal before lunch. Like if you eat a late breakfast and you never get back to normal before lunch, or if you bolus incorrectly and you take too much and you're going low, you want to get back up to normal before lunch. That'll establish a much healthier baseline from which to bolus. So if you're not, like right now I'm 108, I would have to be mindful that my body wants some insulin to get me back down to a normal basal rate, to normal rate in my body, in addition to whatever, if I was eating, I would try to bolus for. And that's a really complicated math. So yeah, try to keep it to 2 meals a day or 3 meals a day. 2 meals a day is when you're first experimenting. You fast for 6 or 8 hours in the morning. And I would suggest not even to have coffee or tea, because that can impact your basal need for your body. And again, just taking just a little bit of insulin, a little bit of sugar, until you're at the correct dose. 4 minutes ago, so we've got a minute or a minute and a half left. All right, cool. So it's 105, and I've gone back down to 101. So, of course, what are we thinking? This must be going back down low, and maybe it's going to go too low again. But if I check, let's start with just a little bit of sugar. This little bit of sugar. Normally, you hold your hand over it. I'm going to introduce another technique which I can hold it in my palm and focus on it while I test. And it's not testing positive, and it still tests negative. And a little bit of banana or cracker the same. So I'm going to assume that this is going to perfectly level back down to my preferred or my ideal basal rate.